The morning sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink as Donald Trump's motorcade rolled through the quiet streets of Millfield, a small town tucked away in the heartland of America. The former president was scheduled to speak at a local Dutch community center, and as usual his visit had turned the sleepy town into a buzzing hive of activity. Trump sat in the back of his black SUV, reviewing his notes one last time. He'd been on the road for 3 days straight, and the familiar rhythm of travel had settled in. Security checks, handshakes, speeches, repeat. Outside his window, the rural landscape slowly gave way to scattered houses and small businesses, their fronts decorated with American flags fluttering in the autumn breeze. 5 minutes, sir, his driver called back, navigating the winding country road that led into town. Trump nodded, tucking his papers into a leather folder. He straightened his red tie and gazed out the window, taking in the rolling hills dotted with trees showing their fall colors. These small-town visits always reminded him of parts of America that big city politicians often forgot existed. That's when he saw it, a flash of movement on the side of the road. "Hold up," Trump said suddenly, leaning forward in his seat. "Stop the car." The driver hesitated, trained to keep moving for security reasons. "Sir, we're on a tight schedule." I said, "Stop the car," Trump repeated, his voice firm but not harsh. The motorcade slowed, and through the window, Trump could now clearly see what had caught his eye. A dog, thin and limping, making its way slowly along the roadside. Its fur was matted and dirty, its movements stiff and pained. Secret Service agents immediately tensed, hands moving to their earpieces, exchanging quick, concerned words. This wasn't protocol. Unscheduled stops were security nightmares. "Sir, we really should keep moving," said Agent Wilson, the head of his security detail. "We can call animal control to pick up the stray." Trump wasn't listening. His eyes remained fixed on the dog, which had stopped to look at the row of black vehicles with what seemed like weary curiosity. "That's no ordinary stray," Trump said, quietly. Before anyone could stop him, he opened the door and stepped out into the crisp morning air. The security team scrambled, forming a protective circle around him, scanning the surroundings with practiced efficiency. The dog watched the commotion with tired eyes but didn't run. As Trump approached slowly, he could see why. The animal's back leg was clearly injured, and its body was so thin that its ribs showed through the dirty golden brown coat. But what caught Trump's attention was the faded collar around its neck. With metal tags that glinted in the morning sunlight, Trump crouched down, ignoring the protests of his security team and the wrinkles that would form in his perfectly pressed suit. "Hey there, old fella," he said softly, extending his hand palm up, the way his childhood friend had taught him to approach unfamiliar dogs. The dog looked at him with cloudy eyes, the kind that come with age, and sniffed the air cautiously. After a moment's hesitation, it limped forward, one halting step at a time. By now, the entire motorcade had stopped. Staffers watched through tinted windows, journalists who had been following the convoy readied their cameras, and locals began to gather at a distance, held back by more security personnel who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Sir," Agent Wilson tried again, "we really need to—" "Give me a minute," Trump said, not taking his eyes off the approaching dog. There was something about the animal's dignified struggle that struck him. Despite its obvious pain and hunger, it carried itself with a certain pride. When the dog was just a few feet away, Trump noticed something else. Scars on its muzzle and along its sides, not from recent abuse, but old marks that told a story of a life lived in service. The dog finally reached him and cautiously sniffed his outstretched hand. Then, to everyone's surprise, it sat down in front of Trump, a reflexive action that spoke of years of training. "Look at that," Trump murmured, gently turning the tag on the collar. "Max," he read aloud. The other tags were military issue, K9 unit identifiers and service dates. A local sheriff's deputy who had been helping with the motorcade route approached, tipping his hat respectfully. "Mr. President," he said, using the title out of habit rather than correctness, "is everything all right?" "This dog," Trump said, gesturing to the animal who was now leaning slightly against his leg, seeking warmth. "He's a military dog, retired by the looks of it. The deputy knelt down to get a better look at the tags. "You're right, sir. This is a retired military working dog. K-9 unit from Fort Campbell. But what's he doing out here all alone?" Trump removed his suit jacket, ignoring the cool air that immediately seeped through his shirt, and carefully draped it around the shivering animal. Max looked up at him with what could only be described as gratitude. "That's what I'd like to know," Trump said, a hint of anger creeping into his voice. "Who abandons a hero like this?" By now, a small crowd had gathered at a respectful distance, phones out, capturing the unexpected scene. Trump was aware of the cameras, but for once they weren't at the forefront of his mind. Instead, he focused on the way Max leaned against him, as if the dog had been carrying a heavy weight for too long and had finally found someone to share the burden. "Sir," his chief of staff approached, schedule in hand. "The community center is waiting. We're already 15 minutes behind." Trump stood slowly, careful not to startle Max. "Call them. Tell them I'll be delayed." Delayed? By how much? Trump looked down at Max, who looked back up at him with eyes that had seen too much. "As long as it takes. Find me the nearest vet clinic." The staff exchanged glances. This wasn't the first time their boss had gone off script, but usually it was for a political opportunity or because something had caught his interest. This was different. 20 minutes later, Trump was walking through the doors of Millfield Veterinary Clinic, a small practice on the edge of town. Max walked beside him, limping but seemingly more energetic now, as if he understood he was being taken to get help. Dr. Patel, the veterinarian, had been given exactly 3 minutes' notice that the former President of the United States was bringing in a stray dog. The small waiting room, usually occupied by local farmers and families with pets, had been hurriedly cleared by Secret Service agents who now stood at every entrance and exit. "Mr. Trump," Dr. Patel said, her surprise evident despite her professional demeanor. "This is mighty unexpected." "For me too, Doc," Trump replied with a small smile. "But this old soldier needs help." Dr. Patel knelt down to examine Max, who allowed the handling with military stoicism. Her face grew more concerned as she checked his body, felt his ribs, and examined his wounded leg. "He's severely malnourished," she said finally. "Dehydrated too. The leg has an infection that's been left untreated for some time, and his teeth need attention." She looked up at Trump. "This is a dog that's been abandoned and neglected, but not for his whole life. Before this, he was well trained and cared for." Trump nodded. "He's a military dog, served our country, and this is how we repay him?" The small exam room fell silent, as the implications of his words sank in. "We'll need to keep him for treatment," Dr. Patel said. "IV fluids, antibiotics, proper food. It will take some time." Trump nodded again, his mind seemingly made up about something. He reached down and gently ran his hand over Max's head. The dog closed his eyes briefly at the touch. "Do whatever he needs," Trump said. "I'll cover all costs, and I want updates, daily updates on his condition." Dr. Patel blinked in surprise. "Of course, but what will happen to him after he recovers? The local shelter is already overcrowded, and older dogs with health issues are hard to place." Trump looked at Max for a long moment. The dog returned, his gaze steadily, two old warriors sizing each other up. "He won't be going to any shelter," Trump said finally. "When he's ready to leave, call me directly. I'll handle the rest." Outside the clinic, the crowd had grown. Word had spread through town about the unexpected drama unfolding on what should have been a routine political visit. Journalists shouted questions as Trump emerged from the building. "Mr. Trump, why the sudden interest in animal welfare? Is this a new campaign strategy? What about your speaking engagement?" Trump paused on the steps of the clinic, looking out at the sea of curious faces and flashing cameras. For once, he didn't seem to be playing to the crowd or calculating his response for maximum effect. Instead, he spoke simply. "Sometimes you see something wrong and you have to make it right. That's all there is to it." As he walked back to his waiting vehicle, whispers rippled through the crowd. Nobody quite knew what to make of what they'd just witnessed. The man known for his brash confidence and political theatrics had just sidetracked his entire schedule for a stray dog. What nobody realized yet not the journalists, not the curious locals, not even Trump himself, was that this unexpected detour was about to take him down a path that would surprise everyone. And it would. All begin with an old dog named Max, who had served his country faithfully only to be forgotten, until today. The next morning, Trump woke earlier than usual. The events of the previous day played through his mind as he sipped his coffee and looked out the window of his hotel suite. His schedule for the day was packed. 3 speaking engagements, a fundraising lunch, and a dinner with local business leaders. But his thoughts kept drifting back to Max. He picked up his phone and called Dr. Patel's clinic before his staff arrived with the day's briefing materials. "Good morning, Millfield Veterinary Clinic," a cheerful voice answered. "This is Donald Trump. I'm calling about Max, the dog I brought in yesterday." There was a brief pause. "Oh, yes, Mr. Trump. Let me get Dr. Patel for you." A moment later, the veterinarian came on the line. "Mr. Trump, I was just about to have my staff send you an update. Max had a comfortable night. We've started him on antibiotics for the infection in his leg, and he's on IV fluids to address the dehydration. He ate a small meal last night, which is a good sign." "He's going to make it then?" Trump asked, surprised by how much the answer mattered to him. "I believe so, yes. He's weak but resilient. Military dogs are bred and trained to be tough. But his recovery won't be quick or simple. The infection is serious and his age complicates things. He'll need physical therapy for that leg, special food for his digestive system, and dental work." Trump nodded, though she couldn't see him. "Money's not an issue. Do whatever he needs." "There's something else," Dr. Patel said. "I made some calls last night and found out more about Max. He was a specialized detection dog, trained to find explosives. He served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. He saved countless lives by finding hidden IEDs." Trump's grip on his coffee cup tightened. "And someone just dumped him by the side of the road?" "That's what's strange," Dr. Patel replied. "According to my contact at Fort Campbell, Max was adopted 2 years ago by his former handler when he retired from service. But that handler died 6 months ago in a car accident. Max should have been returned to the military's adoption program, but somehow he fell through the cracks. How he ended up on that road in Millfield, nobody knows." The news hit Trump harder than he expected. A wave of righteous anger swept through him. Not the calculated kind he sometimes used in speeches, but something genuine and personal. This wasn't right. A dog that had served his country, saved American lives, deserved better. "I'd like to visit him today," Trump said abruptly. "Of course. When would be convenient for you?" Trump looked at his watch. His first event wasn't until 10 a.m. "How about 8:30? When he hung up, his chief of staff, Bill Henderson, was standing in the doorway with a concerned expression. "Sir, I couldn't help overhearing. Are you changing the schedule again?" Trump turned to face him. "Just a small detour on the way to the community center. I want to check on the dog." Henderson sighed. "Sir, with all due respect, we have a tight schedule today. The press is already having a field day with yesterday's unplanned event. Some are saying it was a publicity stunt." Trump snorted. "Of course they are. That's what they always say." He set down his coffee cup with a decisive clink. "Put it on the schedule, Bill. 8:30 at the vet clinic, 15 minutes. And if they ask why you're so invested in this particular dog?" Trump looked out the window again, watching the sun rise over the small town. "Then tell them the truth. Some things are more important than politics." At precisely 8:30 a.m., Trump walked through the doors of the Millfield Veterinary Clinic for the second time. Today, however, the waiting room wasn't empty. A few local pet owners sat with their animals, looking up in surprise as the former president and his security detail entered. Dr. Patel greeted him personally, leading him through to a quiet back room where Max was resting in a large kennel. The old dog was hooked up to an IV, but he lifted his head when Trump entered, his tail giving a weak thump against the bedding. "He remembers you," Dr. Patel said with surprise. Trump knelt down by the kennel, opening the door to gently stroke Max's head. The dog's eyes, though still cloudy with age, seemed brighter today. "He's looking better already," Trump observed. "The wonders of proper care," Dr. Patel said. "We've cleaned him up too. His coat was in terrible shape." Indeed, Max's golden brown fur, though thin in places, was now clean and brushed. The difference was remarkable. "I found these in his collar pouch," Dr. Patel said, handing Trump a small plastic bag. Inside were 2 worn photographs and a folded piece of paper. Trump carefully opened the paper first. It was a military commendation, citing explosive detection. Dog Max for exceptional service that saved an entire platoon from a hidden IED nest. The photos showed a younger Max with his handler, a smiling young man in desert camouflage, his arm around his 4-legged partner. "His handler," Trump said softly. "The one who died." Dr. Patel nodded. "Staff Sergeant Thomas Reed. He adopted Max after they both retired from service. According to what I learned, Reed had no family. When he died, there was no one to take Max." Trump studied the photo again, taking in the proud stance of both man and dog, the clear bond between them. "He did have family," Trump said firmly. "He had Max." For a few minutes, Trump just sat with the dog, occasionally speaking to him in low tones that the others couldn't hear. Max seemed content with the company, resting his head on his paws but keeping his eyes on Trump. Finally, Trump stood, brushing dog hair from his suit pants. "I have a speech to give, but I'll be back. You hang in there, Max." As he turned to leave, Dr. Patel stopped him. "Mr. Trump, there's something else you should know. I've been contacted by several reporters asking about Max. Word has spread about what happened yesterday. People are curious about what's going to happen to him." Trump wasn't surprised. In the age of social media, nothing stayed private for long. "What did you tell them?" "That he's receiving treatment and that his future arrangements are being determined. But they'll keep asking." Trump thought for a moment. "Tell them I'm personally overseeing his care for now. That's all they need to know." Throughout his speech at the community center, Trump found his mind wandering to Max. He delivered his prepared remarks on economic policy. But when the time came for questions, the first one wasn't about taxes or jobs. "Mr. Trump?" a local reporter asked, standing up with notepad in hand. "Everyone in town is talking about what happened yesterday with the abandoned dog. Can you tell us why you stopped your entire motorcade for a stray?" The room fell silent, waiting for his answer. Trump looked out at the sea of faces, seeing genuine curiosity rather than the usual political calculation. "He wasn't just a stray," Trump said, his voice softer than his usual public speaking tone. "His name is Max. He's a retired military dog who served 4 tours protecting American soldiers. He saved lives by finding hidden explosives. When I saw him by the road, I didn't know all that. I just saw an animal in need. But now that I do know, I'm even more certain I did the right thing." The reporter pressed on. "And what will happen to Max now?" Trump hadn't planned to address this yet. He hadn't even fully decided himself. But standing there, faced with the question directly, the answer came to him with surprising clarity. Max served his country honorably. He deserves to live out his years with dignity and care. I'm going to make sure that happens." After the speech, Trump's phone buzzed with messages. His publicity team wanted guidance on how to handle the growing media interest in the dog story. His political advisors were split. Some saw it as a distraction from policy messages, others as a humanizing moment to embrace. Trump silenced the phone and turned to Bill Henderson. "Cancel the fundraising lunch." Henderson's eyes widened. "Sir, these are major donors who—" "Reschedule it. I want to make some calls about Max." For the next 2 hours from the back of his SUV as they drove between events, Trump spoke to military contacts, veterans advocates, and experts on service animals. Each conversation revealed a larger issue that he'd never considered before. What happened to military working dogs after their service ended? By the time he arrived at his afternoon event, Trump had learned that while policies existed to help these animals find homes after retirement, the system was underfunded and overlooked. Dogs like Max fell through the cracks more often than anyone wanted to admit. That evening, instead of attending the planned dinner with business leaders, Trump returned to the veterinary clinic. He'd sent his regrets to the dinner hosts, claiming an important matter required his attention. His staff was bewildered. his security detail exasperated, but Trump was unmoved. Max was sitting up when Trump arrived, looking noticeably stronger. Dr. Patel reported that his blood work was showing improvement and the infection was responding to antibiotics. "He's a fighter," she said with a smile. "Of course he is," Trump replied, sitting down beside the kennel. "He's a veteran." For over an hour, Trump sat with Max, sometimes talking softly to him, sometimes just keeping him company in silence. The dog seemed to draw strength from his presence, occasionally nudging Trump's hand with his nose when the petting stopped. As he was preparing to leave, Trump turned to Dr. Patel with determination in his eyes. "I've made a decision about Max." "Oh?" she said, looking up from her charts. "When he's well enough to travel, he's coming with me, and not just him. This has opened my eyes to something important, something I should have known about before. These dogs serve our country just like human soldiers do. They deserve better than to end up abandoned." Dr. Patel smiled. "I think Max would like that." Trump looked back at the old dog, who was watching, him with those intelligent eyes that had seen war and loss and now perhaps hope. "This isn't the end of this story," Trump said quietly. "It's just the beginning." 3 weeks passed, and Max's recovery progressed steadily under Dr. Patel's care. Trump had long since moved on from Millfield, continuing his scheduled appearances across the country. But he called the clinic daily for updates. Sometimes late at night when the day's events were done, he would video chat with the staff so they could show him how Max was doing. The story of the former president and the abandoned military dog had spread far beyond the small town. News outlets picked it up, social media buzzed with videos of the roadside rescue, and public interest grew with each passing day. Some political commentators dismissed it as a publicity stunt, while others grudgingly acknowledged the genuine nature of Trump's concern. But Trump himself paid little attention to the media circus. His focus remained on Max and the troubling reality he discovered about retired military working dogs. "It's a disgrace," he said during a phone call with Dr. Patel. "These dogs risk their lives for our country. And then what? We just forget about them? No, not anymore." Dr. Patel smiled at his passion. Over the past weeks, she'd watched him transform from a politician making a kind gesture to a man on a mission. "Max is ready to travel now," she told him. "His infection is cleared up, he's gained weight, and his energy is much better. The limp will probably always be there. Arthritis at his age doesn't go away, but he's comfortable and mobile." "Good," Trump said firmly. "I'll send my plane tomorrow, and I want you to come with him, doctor, to help him settle in and to tell me everything I need to know about his ongoing care." The next day, a private jet landed at the small regional airport near Millfield. Dr. Patel drove Max to the tarmac, where a staff member from Trump's team waited to escort them aboard. For a small-town veterinarian who typically treated farm, animals and family pets, flying on a private jet was surreal enough. Knowing she was headed to meet a former president at his Florida estate made it feel like a dream. Max, however, seemed to take it all in stride. As a military dog who had flown in cargo planes and helicopters, the comfortable cabin of the private jet didn't faze him. He settled onto a plush blanket laid out especially for him and dozed for most of the flight. When they landed in Florida, the heat hit them immediately as they descended the steps from the plane. A black SUV waited on the tarmac, and inside sat Trump himself, breaking protocol by coming personally to greet them. "There he is," Trump said as Max approached the vehicle, his tail wagging with more vigor than Dr. Patel had seen before. "Looking much better, aren't you, old soldier?" The drive to Trump's estate was filled with questions about Max's care, his dietary needs, exercise limitations, and medication schedule. Dr. Patel answered each one, impressed by Trump's attention to detail. This wasn't a man delegating a task. He wanted to understand everything himself. "I've prepared a space for him," Trump explained as they pulled through the gates of his sprawling property. Had it built specifically with his needs in mind? Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow. "You built something in 3 weeks?" Trump chuckled. "When you want something done right, you move fast." The space turned out to be a fully equipped dog suite built adjacent to Trump's private quarters. It featured a comfortable memory foam bed sized for a large dog, easy access water fountains, climate control, and even a gently sloped ramp to help Max move between areas without stressing his arthritic joints. I consulted with experts on aging dogs, Trump explained as Max explored his new home, sniffing each corner with interest. Military handlers, too, to understand what would make him feel secure. This is extraordinary, Dr. Patel said, taking it all in. Most people wouldn't do this much for a dog they've had for years, let alone one they've just met. Trump watched Max settle onto the bed, testing its softness with a few careful turns before lying down with a contented sigh. He's not just any dog, though, is he? He's given more to this country than most people. Over lunch served on the terrace overlooking manicured gardens, Trump explained what he'd been learning about military working dogs, how they saved an estimated 150-200 American lives each during their service, how the specialized training they received made them worth tens of thousands of dollars, and how, despite their value and service, their aftercare often fell short. Did you know, he said, setting down his fork with unusual intensity, that before 2000, these dogs were considered equipment? When they got too old to serve, they were often euthanized, like throwing away a used Jeep or a worn-out boot. Dr. Patel nodded. The law changed, allowing for adoption instead. It was a big step forward. But not enough, Trump insisted. The system is still full of holes. Dogs like Max still fall through the cracks. Their medical care after service isn't guaranteed. The handlers who want to adopt them sometimes can't afford their specialized needs. He shook his head. It's not right. After lunch, Trump had to attend a scheduled meeting, so Dr. Patel spent time with the household staff who would be helping care for Max. She was impressed by how thoroughly they'd been trained. Each one knew the precise amount of food Max needed, how to administer his medications, and the signs that might indicate pain or discomfort. When Trump returned hours later, he found Dr. Patel sitting on the floor beside Max's bed, gently stroking the sleeping dog's ear. He's settled in well, she said, looking up at Trump. I think he knows he's home. The word hung in the air between them. Home. Such a simple concept, but one that had been missing from Max's life since his handler died. I've been thinking, Trump said, sitting down in a nearby chair. Max's story isn't unique. There are hundreds of retired military dogs out there. Some are with their handlers, which is ideal, but others are waiting for homes or stuck in situations where their needs aren't being met. Dr. Patel nodded. The adoption programs do their best with limited resources. Exactly. Limited resources. Trump leaned forward, his eyes lit with the same fire she'd seen when he talked about policy or political opponents. But what if they had unlimited resources? What if money was no object when it came to caring for these animals? That would change everything, Dr. Patel said. But I'm going to set up a foundation, Trump interrupted, the idea clearly already taking shape in his mind. Dedicated solely to the welfare of retired military working dogs, full medical care for life, stipends for handlers who adopt them, training for families who take them in, a sanctuary for those who can't be placed. The works. Dr. Patel blinked in surprise. That's a major undertaking. I know people with money, Trump said with a wave of his hand. People who respect our military. Once they understand what these dogs do, how they save American lives, they'll want to help. And I'll match whatever comes in, dollar for dollar. As the afternoon wore on, the idea evolved from concept to concrete plan. Trump made calls, consulted advisors, and drafted initial proposals. His usual business intensity was fully engaged, but with a warmth and passion that Dr. Patel hadn't expected. By evening, when Dr. Patel was preparing to leave for her hotel, Trump had already scheduled meetings with veterans groups, animal welfare experts, and potential donors for the following week. You've started something remarkable, Dr. Patel said as they stood by the car that would take her to her hotel. All because you stopped for one dog on the side of the road. Trump looked back toward the house where Max was now resting comfortably in his new bed. Sometimes the smallest decisions make the biggest difference. I've always believed that. He turned back to Dr. Patel with an unexpected request. Would you consider being involved? As a consultant or advisor to the foundation, we need people who understand both the medical needs of these animals and the heart behind the mission. Surprised but touched, Dr. Patel nodded. I'd be honored, but I have my practice in Millfield. We'll work around that, Trump assured her. Video calls, occasional trips, whatever works. The important thing is having the right people involved. As her car pulled away, Dr. Patel looked back at the sprawling estate where an unlikely bond had changed not just one dog's life, but potentially the lives of hundreds of service animals across the country. That night, Trump sat late into the evening on the floor beside Max's bed, a stack of papers in his lap as he worked through foundation details. Max slept peacefully, occasionally twitching in dreams that perhaps took him back to his days of service. You know, Trump said softly to the sleeping dog, people think I rescued you, but I'm starting to think it might be the other way around. He reached over to gently stroke Max's head, and in his sleep, the old dog leaned into the touch. Two unlikely companions, brought together by chance or fate or whatever name you might give to those moments that change the course of lives. What had begun as a simple act of kindness on a country road was growing into something neither of them could have imagined. For Max, it meant safety, comfort, and care in his final years. For Trump, it meant a new purpose, a cause that transcended politics and spoke to something more fundamental, the debt owed to those who serve, whether on 2 legs or 4. And for hundreds of military dogs across the country, it would soon mean the difference between abandonment and honor, between forgotten service and recognized sacrifice, all because one man decided to stop his car on a chilly autumn morning. 2 months after bringing Max home, Trump stood at a podium in a hotel ballroom in Washington, D.C. The room was packed with journalists, military officials, veterans, animal welfare advocates, and potential donors. Max sat calmly at his side, wearing a special vest with patches showing his military service record. Ladies and gentlemen, Trump began, his voice carrying across the hushed room. I didn't come here today to talk about politics. I came to talk about heroes. Heroes who have never asked for recognition, who have served our country with nothing but loyalty and courage, asking for nothing in return. He reached down to rest his hand on Max's head. The elderly dog leaned against his leg, a gesture that had become familiar between them. This is Max. He saved countless American lives by finding hidden explosives in Afghanistan and Iraq. When his service ended, the system failed him. His handler died, and Max was left alone, abandoned on a roadside where I found him by chance. Trump paused, scanning the room. But Max's story isn't unique. There are thousands of military working, dogs who serve our great country. They detect bombs, find enemy combatants, guard our troops, and provide vital support in ways we're only beginning to understand. They risk their lives just like our human soldiers do, and they deserve better than what we're giving them. For the next 20 minutes, Trump laid out the stark reality of what happened to many military dogs after their service. The gaps in the system, the lack of guaranteed medical care, the challenges faced by handlers who wanted to adopt their partners but couldn't afford their specialized needs. Today, Trump announced, I'm launching the Loyal Companions Foundation. Its mission is simple: to ensure that every military working dog receives the care, respect, and retirement they've earned through their service. He outlined the foundation's 3 main goals: providing full medical care for life to all retired military dogs, offering financial support to handlers who adopted their partners, and creating a sanctuary for dogs who couldn't be placed in homes. I'm personally committing $20 million to get this started, Trump said, drawing gasps from the audience. And I'm challenging others who love our military and our country to join me. These dogs gave everything for us. Now it's our turn to give back to them. As he wrapped up his speech, Trump looked down at Max. Sometimes it takes one story, one face to help us see what's been right in front of us all along. Max here taught me that, and together, we're going to make sure no military dog is ever forgotten again. The applause was thunderous. Even journalists, who had often been critical of Trump, were visibly moved. As the clapping continued, Max looked up at Trump, his tail wagging slowly, seemingly aware that something important had just happened. After the announcement, the real work began. Trump assembled a team of experts, veterinarians specializing in working dogs, former military dog handlers, nonprofit management professionals, and animal welfare advocates. Dr. Patel was brought on as the chief medical advisor, traveling from Millfield to consult on setting up care protocols. The foundation headquarters was established in a renovated building near a major military base, making it accessible to handlers and their dogs. Within the first month, they had identified over 300 retired military dogs across the country who needed immediate support. One evening, 6 months after finding Max, Trump sat in his office reviewing files on dogs the foundation was helping. Max dozed nearby in his bed, occasionally twitching in his sleep. The old dog had become a constant companion, attending meetings, accompanying Trump on shorter trips, and even making appearances at foundation events. A knock at the door interrupted Trump's work. His assistant entered, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's very insistent. Says it's about Max." Trump frowned. "Who is it?" "A Lieutenant Rodriguez, sir. He says he served with Max and his handler in Afghanistan." Trump's expression changed immediately. "Send him in." A minute later, a young man in civilian clothes entered the office. He stood straight, his military bearing obvious despite the jeans and button-down shirt he wore. When he spotted Max, his eyes widened. "It really is him," he said softly. At the sound of the stranger's voice, Max raised his head. For a moment, the old dog just stared. Then, with more energy than Trump had ever seen him display, Max struggled to his feet and limped quickly across the room, whining with excitement. Lieutenant Rodriguez knelt down, his composure breaking, as Max reached him, licking his face and pressing against him. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Remember me? We went through some tough times together, didn't we?" Trump watched silently, understanding he was witnessing a reunion that meant more than he could fully grasp. After a few minutes, Rodriguez looked up, still petting Max. "Thank you for what you're doing for him, sir, and for all the other dogs. When I saw the news about your foundation, I couldn't believe it. Then when I saw Max with you..." He shook his head in wonder. "You served with him?" Trump asked, gesturing for the young man to take a seat. Rodriguez nodded, still running his hand over Max's head as the dog leaned against his leg. "2 tours. I was part of Staff Sergeant Reed's unit. Max here saved our lives more times than I can count. Had this way of just knowing where the danger was." He smiled down at the dog. "We used to say he could smell trouble before it happened." "Tell me about Reed," Trump said, leaning forward. "Max's handler." Rodriguez's smile faded, slightly. "Best man I ever served with. Loved this dog like he was his own child. When they both retired and Reed adopted him, it seemed perfect." He sighed. "When Reed died, we all tried to find out what happened to Max, but nobody seemed to know. The system lost track of him somehow." "Well, he's found now," Trump said firmly, "and he's not going anywhere." They talked for over an hour, with Rodriguez sharing stories of Max's bravery in the field. How he once led the unit safely through a minefield when their equipment failed. How he found a hidden cache of explosives that would have taken out an entire convoy. How he would sleep pressed against Reed's cot during thunderstorms in the desert. "I brought something," Rodriguez said finally, reaching into his pocket. "I thought you might want to have this." He pulled out a worn photograph showing a group of soldiers with Max sitting proudly in front of them. "This was our unit. Max was our good luck charm. Not one of us didn't make it home, and we all know it was because of him." Trump accepted the photo carefully, studying the faces of the young men whose lives Max had helped save. "This belongs in the foundation headquarters," he said. "With your permission, of course." "That's why I brought it, sir," Rodriguez replied. "People should know what these dogs do for us over there." Before leaving, Rodriguez knelt down once more to say goodbye to Max. The old dog seemed reluctant to let him go, following him to the door. "He'll be all right," Trump assured the young veteran. "And he's helping make sure all the dogs like him get the care they deserve." Rodriguez nodded, blinking back tears. Reed would be happy about that. He always said Max deserved a parade. When he got home, not just a pat on the head and a kennel. After Rodriguez left, Trump returned to his desk, but his mind wasn't on paperwork anymore. He watched Max, who had settled back in his bed but seemed more alert than before, as if the visit had awakened memories. "You've lived quite a life, haven't you?" Trump said softly to the dog, "and you're not done yet." The next morning, Trump called an emergency meeting with the foundation leadership team. When they gathered in the conference room, they found him unusually energetic, pacing as he waited for everyone to arrive. "We need to think bigger," he announced once they were all seated. "The foundation is doing good work, great work, but it's not enough. These dogs are veterans, just like the men and women who handle them. They should be recognized as such officially." The team exchanged glances, unsure where he was heading with this. "I want legislation," Trump continued. "A bill that guarantees lifelong care for all military working dogs, that recognizes their service officially, that ensures none of them fall through the cracks again. I want to change the system, not just patch the holes in it." "That's ambitious," the foundation's legal advisor said cautiously. "Of course it is," Trump replied with a familiar confidence. "But we have something powerful on our side, a story that resonates with people across political lines, Max's story. And we have the stories of hundreds of other dogs and their handlers that we've already helped." He pulled out the photograph Rodriguez had given him the night before, passing it around the table. "Every dog has a story like this. Every one of them protected American lives. This isn't about politics, it's about doing what's right." By the end of the meeting, a plan was taking shape. A campaign to push for national legislation protecting and honoring military working dogs, combined with a public awareness initiative to share the stories of these animals and their handlers. That evening, Trump took Max for their usual walk around the grounds of his estate. The old dog moved slowly but seemed more energized since Rodriguez's visit, as if being reminded of his past had given him new purpose. "We've got work to do, old friend," Trump told him as they paused to watch the sunset. "And I think we're just getting started." Max looked up at him with those intelligent eyes that had seen war and peace, loss and rescue, abandonment, and renewed purpose. In them, Trump saw something that transcended politics and divisions, something pure and true that reminded him why this unexpected journey mattered so much. It wasn't just about helping dogs. It was about honoring service, recognizing sacrifice, and keeping promises to those who couldn't speak for themselves. It was about the best of America, the values that everyone, regardless of political beliefs, could stand behind. And it had all begun with one simple choice to stop on a country road. 1 year had passed since that fateful morning when Trump spotted Max on the roadside. The once abandoned military dog had become a beloved fixture at Trump's side, accompanying him to meetings, events, and even occasional political rallies, where he wore his special vest displaying his military service medals. Max's health had stabilized, under constant care. Though his muzzle had grown wider and his movements slower, his eyes remained bright and alert. The bond between the unlikely pair had deepened into something that surprised even those closest to Trump. The man known for his tough talk and business dealings showed a gentle side when it came to the aging dog, often pausing mid-conversation to make sure Max was comfortable or slipping him treats when he thought no one was looking. But today was about more than just Max. It was about all the dogs like him. Trump stood in the rose garden of the White House, having been invited by his former political rivals for a rare moment of bipartisan unity. Max sat beside him, watching the crowd with dignified patience. Behind them stood a group of military dog handlers with their canine partners, both active and retired, along with veterans whose lives had been saved by these four-legged heroes. The President of the United States approached the podium, nodding respectfully to Trump before addressing the gathered press and guests. "Today, I'm proud to sign into law the Military Working Dog Protection Act," the President announced. "This legislation ensures that every dog who serves our armed forces will receive the care, respect, and retirement they've earned. No military dog will ever again be abandoned or forgotten after their service." The President looked over at Trump and Max. Sometimes the greatest changes come from unexpected places. A year ago, a chance encounter on a country road led to a movement that has united Americans across political divides. Today, that movement becomes law. Trump had been asked to say a few words, and he rose to approach the podium, Max following faithfully at his side. "I'm not here as a politician today," Trump began, his voice softer than his usual public speaking tone. "I'm here as an American who believes we owe a debt to those who serve, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4. He glanced down at Max, who sat at attention beside him. "This old boy here taught me something important. Our differences, political, personal, whatever they may be, they're small compared to the values we share. Loyalty, service, keeping our promises, taking care of those who have protected us." Trump gestured to the handlers and dogs standing behind him. "These dogs save American lives every day. They run toward danger while others run away. They ask for nothing but care and kindness in return. This law makes sure they get it." As Trump returned to his seat, the applause was universal, from Republicans, Democrats, military personnel, and civilians alike. The president signed the legislation with multiple pens, handing the first one to Trump and another to a young handler, whose dog had recently returned from overseas deployment. The law Trump had championed went far beyond his original foundations. Goals. It guaranteed lifetime medical care for all military working dogs, created a medal of service specifically for canine heroes, established a streamlined adoption process prioritizing handlers, and allocated funds for a national retirement center for dogs who couldn't be placed in homes. Most importantly, it officially recognized these dogs as veterans, not equipment, a distinction that changed everything about how they would be treated going forward. After the ceremony, as people mingled in the rose garden, a young girl approached Trump and Max. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, wearing a dress with red, white, and blue ribbons in her hair. "Can I pet your dog, sir?" she asked shyly. Trump smiled. "Of course. His name is Max. He's a war hero, you know." The girl knelt and gently stroked Max's head. "Thank you for your service, Max," she said with the solemn seriousness only children can truly master. Max, who normally maintained a dignified reserve with strangers, leaned into her touch and wagged his tail. "He likes you," Trump observed. The girl beamed. "My daddy had a dog like him in the army. His name was Rex. Daddy says Rex saved his life." "Is your father here today?" Trump asked, looking around. She nodded and pointed to a man in uniform standing with a group of veterans across the garden. The man noticed his daughter with the former president and headed their way. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, sir," the soldier said, reaching for his daughter's hand. "Not at all," Trump replied. "Your daughter was just making friends with Max here." The soldier knelt down to greet Max properly, with the respectful handling of someone who understood military dogs. "It's an honor, Max," he said quietly. "My Rex got me home to my family. I owe dogs like you everything." As the soldier stood, he extended his hand to Trump. "And thank you, sir. What you've done with this law, it means more than you know to those of us who've served with these dogs. They're not just animals to us. They're partners, family." The simple sincerity in the man's voice captured exactly why this cause had resonated so deeply across the country. It wasn't about politics or publicity. It was about loyalty, partnership, and keeping faith with those who serve. Later that evening, Trump and Max flew back to Florida on a private plane. Max slept peacefully on his special bed while Trump reviewed the day's events with his staff. The Loyal Companions Foundation had grown beyond anything they had initially imagined, now supporting over 1,000 retired military dogs and their handlers across the country. "The calls are still coming in," his foundation director reported. "Veterans sharing stories about the dogs who served with them, people wanting to volunteer, companies offering support." Trump nodded, looking over at the sleeping Max. "Make sure we capture all those stories. They're what matters most, not the politics, not the publicity. The real experiences of these dogs and the people who served with them." When they arrived home, Trump took Max for their evening walk despite the late hour. The old dog moved slowly but contentedly along their usual path through the gardens. They stopped at their favorite spot overlooking the water, where they had, spent many quiet evenings together. "We did good, Max," Trump said softly, watching the moonlight on the water. "Really good." As if understanding, Max pressed against his leg in that familiar gesture of companionship. 6 months later, on a warm spring morning, Max passed away peacefully in his sleep. He had spent his final year and a half surrounded by comfort, care, and purpose, a far cry from the abandoned dog Trump had found on that country roadside. The news of Max's passing drew an outpouring of support from across the country. Veterans sent photos of their service dogs giving a paw salute. Children sent hand-drawn pictures of Max with angel wings. Even political opponents expressed sincere condolences. At a small, private ceremony held on the grounds of the Foundation's headquarters, a memorial was unveiled. A bronze statue of Max in his prime, alert and ready to serve. The plaque beneath it read, "In honor of Max and all military working dogs who have served our nation with loyalty and courage. No longer forgotten, forever remembered." Trump stood before the gathered crowd of veterans, handlers, and Foundation staff, his usual confidence tempered by genuine emotion. "Max was just one dog," he said, his voice steady despite the grief visible in his eyes. "But he represented thousands like him who serve without question and love without condition. Through him, we were reminded of what service truly means." He laid his hand on the bronze statue, a final pat for his faithful friend. "Max came into my life by chance. Or maybe it wasn't chance at all. Maybe it was a reminder that sometimes the most important things we do aren't planned. They happen when we stop, when we notice, when we choose to care about something beyond ourselves." As the ceremony concluded, a military dog handler played taps on a bugle, while current service dogs and their handlers stood at attention. It was a hero's farewell for a dog who had begun as a forgotten veteran and ended as a symbol of how America could better honor its promises. The legacy Max left behind continued to grow. The Foundation expanded to include programs for police and search and rescue dogs. The National Retirement Center, now named in Max's honor, became a model facility visited by military representatives from around the world. And thousands of dogs who might otherwise have been forgotten received the care and recognition they deserved. Trump himself changed through his time with Max. Those close to him noted a softening, a patience that hadn't been there before. He spoke often of Max in private conversations, sharing stories of their time together with a warmth that surprised people who only knew his public persona. On the anniversary of finding Max, Trump made it a tradition to visit animal shelters and military dog training facilities. He would sit quietly with the dogs, especially the older ones, giving them the attention others might not. "Every dog has a story," he would say to those who accompanied him. "Every one of them matters." And somewhere perhaps the spirit of a loyal old soldier named Max wagged his tail in agreement, knowing that his last mission, perhaps his most important one, had been accomplished with flying colors. He had helped change how a nation honors its heroes, even those with 4 legs and wet noses. Not bad for a dog who had once been left by the side of the road with nothing but memories of his service and no one to care. Not bad at all,